When I look back to the beginning of 2025, it feels like a different universe. The person I was back then wouldn't recognize the version of me writing this today. My life was tied so closely to someone I thought would be with me forever. We had plans for every season, every holiday, every milestone. We had woven our dreams together so tightly that I didn't know where mine ended and theirs began. The day it all unraveled was both abrupt and inevitable. There had been cracks in the foundation for months, small disagreements, a sense of emotional distance, and subtle changes that neither of us wanted to confront. We both thought love was enough to fix everything. But love, as I've learned, isn't a cure-all. It requires maintenance, sacrifice, and above all, honesty with ourselves and each other. The breakup came on a cold morning in January. We had argued the night before about something trivial. Who would visit whose family for New Year's, which movie to watch, who was spending too much time on their phone. But beneath those superficial conflicts was a deeper discomfort, a realization that we wanted different things from life. I remember the trembling of my hands as I watched them pack their things, the hollow echo of the door closing behind them, the silence that filled the apartment like a thick fog. In the days that followed, I found myself stumbling through each hour. Simple things like brushing my teeth or making coffee felt monumental. My body moved on autopilot while my mind drifted back to memories. Our first trip together, the songs we sang in the car, the jokes only we understood. Every corner of my apartment felt haunted by their presence. I stopped eating properly. Friends would call, and I'd let the phone ring until it went silent. The world outside my window seemed to move at an impossible pace, while I felt frozen, as though I had stepped out of time. I couldn't imagine a future that didn't include them. Nights were the worst. Lying in bed without their warmth next to me felt like sleeping in an endless void. My mind would replay conversations over and over, wondering if I had missed a sign or if there was something I could have done differently to stop them from leaving. I blamed myself, then blamed them, then blamed the universe. The cycle of grief felt endless. A few weeks in, I realized I needed help. I had always been the strong one, the person friends came to for advice. Admitting I couldn't manage on my own felt like a betrayal to that image, but I had no choice. I booked a session with a therapist, someone I had always meant to see but never made time for. Sitting across from a stranger and spilling my rawest emotions felt terrifying at first, but slowly the words started flowing. I cried more in that small office than I had in years. The therapist helped me see that I had been defining my identity around a relationship. Losing it felt like losing myself because I hadn't nurtured my own inner world enough. I began journaling every day, pouring out my fears, regrets, and tiny glimmers of hope. At first, the pages were filled with anger and self-loathing. Over time, they transformed into letters to myself, kind, patient, forgiving. I rediscovered hobbies I had let go of during the relationship. I picked up painting again, using broad, messy strokes to express feelings I couldn't put into words. I started cooking meals that reminded me of home, playing songs that made me dance alone in the kitchen. I found solace in creating beauty, even if it was messy and imperfect. My friends, whom I had pushed away, began visiting. They brought warmth, laughter, and stories from the outside world. We would sit on my living room floor, surrounded by snacks and candles, talking late into the night. They reminded me that life was still rich and full of possibilities, even if I couldn't see it yet. They didn't try to fix me. They just sat with me, held space for my grief, and offered comfort in their quiet, unwavering presence. I started going on long walks, sometimes aimlessly wandering for hours. I watched the city wake up, watched people rushing to work, kids heading to school, couples holding hands. At first, it made me ache with loneliness, but slowly I began to appreciate being an observer, to find peace in the gentle rhythm of the world around me. I realized that healing isn't linear. Some days I felt strong and invincible, ready to take on the world. Other days, I would collapse into tears, feeling as though I was back at square one. But with every wave of pain, there was also a quiet undercurrent of growth. Social media became a complicated battlefield. Everywhere I looked, there were reminders, old photos, shared playlists, memories that felt like knives. I decided to unfollow, mute, or block where necessary. It wasn't about erasing them from existence, but about protecting my fragile heart as it learned to beat on its own again. A few months in, I noticed subtle changes. The morning sunlight felt warmer on my skin. Coffee started to taste like comfort rather than obligation. My laughter, hesitant at first, returned in fuller waves. I reconnected with my family, spent weekends visiting my parents, playing with my nieces and nephews, learning to enjoy simple, quiet moments. I realized how much love still surrounded me. Love that had been there all along, but had taken a back seat when I had been so singularly focused on my relationship. One night in May, I found an old voice message from them that I had missed. My finger hovered over the play button for what felt like an eternity. When I finally listened, I felt a pang, but it didn't break me. Instead, it felt like closing a book I had already finished. I cried that night, but it was a different kind of cry, a release rather than a collapse. As summer arrived, I started traveling alone. I had always dreamed of seeing the northern lights, so I booked a spontaneous trip. Standing alone under a shimmering sky, I felt both insignificant and deeply connected to the universe. I understood then that there was a life beyond what I had lost. I could create new dreams, new memories, new meanings. I met new people along the way, fellow travelers who were also healing from their own heartbreaks. We shared stories over campfires, swapped playlists, exchanged recipes. I learned that loss is a universal experience, yet each of us carries it differently. Some of us bury it, some wear it on our sleeves, some transform it into art or adventure. Returning home, I found my apartment felt less like a museum of grief and more like a sanctuary. I redecorated, moving furniture, painting walls, adding plants. It was my space now, a reflection of the person I was becoming rather than who I used to be. I started dating again, tentatively, not with the desperation to fill a void, but with curiosity. I approached new connections with openness, aware that I didn't need someone to complete me. I was already whole, even with my scars. One of the biggest lessons I learned was that healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means integrating the experience into the tapestry of your life, letting it shape you without defining you. I stopped asking why it happened and started asking what I could learn from it. I realized I had ignored red flags, that I had compromised too much of myself out of fear of losing love. In understanding those patterns, I found the power to change them. There were moments when I doubted I would ever feel joy again, but slowly, joy returned, not in grand, sweeping gestures, but in small, ordinary miracles. The way the rain sounded on my window, the comfort of a soft blanket, the taste of freshly baked bread, the warmth of my friends' laughter, the thrill of a good book. I began to savor those moments, to anchor myself in the present instead of drowning in the past. I often think of the person I was at the start of this journey. So fragile, so convinced that life was over. If I could go back and hold that version of myself, I would tell them, "You are stronger than you think. You will survive this. And not only will you survive, you will grow in ways you never imagined." By the end of 2025, I no longer saw the breakup as a tragic ending. It became a pivotal chapter in my story, a turning point that forced me to confront myself and rebuild my life from the ground up. It taught me to cherish my independence, to nurture my passions, and to build relationships from a place of abundance rather than need. People often ask if I'm over them, if I still think about them. The honest answer is yes, sometimes. But those thoughts no longer carry the same weight. They float in and out like clouds passing across the sky. I can acknowledge them, smile at the good memories, and then return to the present without spiraling into grief. Healing from a breakup isn't about erasing love or pretending it didn't matter. It's about honoring what was, learning from it, and stepping forward with a wiser heart. It's about giving yourself permission to mourn, to feel every messy, uncomfortable emotion without judgment. It's about finding the courage to imagine a future that feels bright and inviting, even when it's different from what you had planned. Today, I feel more alive than I ever did in that relationship. I am more in tune with my needs, my boundaries, my dreams. I have built a life that feels authentic and expansive. And while I don't know what the future holds, I trust myself to navigate it with resilience and grace. Looking back on the entire journey, I see how each moment of pain carried a hidden seed of growth. Every tear watered a part of me that needed attention. Every sleepless night forced me to confront truths I had long ignored. Every act of self-care, no matter how small, was an act of rebellion against despair. If you're reading this while in the middle of your own heartbreak, I want you to know that you're not alone. The path ahead might look impossible now, but step by step, day by day, you will find your way back to yourself. You might feel like you've lost everything, but in time, you'll discover that you are everything you need. The person you're becoming is waiting on the other side of this pain, ready to embrace you with open arms. In sharing my real story, I hope to remind you and myself that healing is not a straight line. It's a winding, sometimes confusing journey, but every detour teaches you something valuable. Be gentle with yourself. Trust the process. And when joy finally returns, let it flood your life without guilt or hesitation. You deserve every ounce of it. That is my real story of healing from a breakup in 2025. A story still unfolding, but one I am proud to call my own.